Unlike some of the Ys games I've played so far, I managed to come into the Oath in Felghana with few preconceptions about how the game would be. I like it when a game gets the chance to surprise me, and this game certainly made quite an impression on me, becoming my favorite Ys game I have played thus far. The story was compelling and enthralling, the characters were lively, the environment was great, and the combat was fantastic. It's a well-made game worthy of praise, and one warning. See, the one preconception I did have coming into the game was a warning that the Oath in Felghana is the hardest game in the Ys series. My verdict? They are absolutely right, and that's actually partly why I enjoyed the game so much. Okay, time to talk about the history of the game. Thankfully, this game's history is not as complicated as some Ys games I've covered in the past. Ys the Oath in Felghana is a remake of the third game in the Ys series, Ys 3 Wanderers from Ys. As part of Nihon Falcom's Ys series, Oath in Felghana is, of course, an action RPG. The original game was released on various PCs back in 1989. By 1991, the game had received ports to the TurboGrafx CD, the Famicom, the SNES, and Sega Genesis. Those wouldn't be the last ports though, because Taito Corporation remade the game for the PS2 in 2005, which was probably bad timing because also in 2005, Ys the Oath in Felghana released in Japan for PC. 5 years later, the game then received a port to the PSP and a localization courtesy of Xseed, with the PC version coming 2 years later. In a rare occurrence, Xseed actually purchased a fan translation script for their uses when making the official translation. Before I move on to the reception the game got, there is one more thing I want to talk about: the difference between the PSP version and the PC version. It used to be that there were two major differences, since the PC version used to not have the voice acting, but back in February of 2020, that was added to the PC version. Thus, the only difference between the two versions now is how the boost mode works. In the PSP version, you can eventually get a double boost mode that enables you to heal while fighting. The PC version does not contain double boost mode. Understandably, this large gameplay change means that the difficulty of the game between the two versions is notably different. The remake received an okay reception in the West, no one throwing 10 out of 10s at it, but usually in the 7 to 8 range. Sales numbers are a complete mystery, for me at least. I hope the game did well though, it deserves the recognition. As is customary in the Ys series, the Oath in Felghana stars adventurer Adol Kristen, a red-haired swordsman with a knack for getting himself mixed up in dangerous and mysterious events. This time, though, he's not wandering into an unknown land unprepared, as he is accompanied by his faithful wall crusher Dogi, who happens to be from Felghana, although he hasn't been back for a while. When Adol and Dogi arrive, they immediately discover monsters have invaded the land, and it turns out Adol's timing couldn't be better because the monsters were just about to attack Elena Stoddard, a childhood friend of Dogi's from the small town of Redmont. Apparently, Elena has grown into quite the young woman from the tomboy Dogi knew, and that's not all that's changed since he left. Namely, the Count who lives in Valestein Castle and lords over Felghana, Count McGuire, has started making demands of the townspeople, asking for more taxes and attempting to shut down the mine that serves as the primary source of income for much of the town. That, along with the increase of monsters in the area, would be bad enough, but it seems Elena's older brother Chester, the best fighter in town, and also Dogi's friend, has left suddenly, adding personal stakes to the ongoing events. It is then up to Adol to figure out why the monsters have appeared and what the Count is up to as he and his lackeys search through Felghana for some mysterious artifacts. Mysteries and dangers await, but this is Adol we're talking about. He's up to the challenge. One of the reasons I adored Oath in Felghana is the characters. I felt this story had more of a personal connection than the previous Ys stories. Perhaps this is because of the significance of Felghana to a previously established character in Dogi. I already liked Dogi, so I was predisposed to share in his belief in the importance of Redmont and the people within it. Elena was important to Dogi, so she became important to me as well, and this connection only became deeper as I interacted with all the characters. Elena in particular is an amazing character, but the townsfolk and even the castle occupants felt very believable and drew me deeper into the world and story. The writing is top-notch for the game, and the story has some good twists, balancing between traditional ones that you might expect and some twists that caught me completely off guard. As for gameplay, Oath and Felghana uses the Napishtim combat system developed in East 6 and also appearing in East Origin. The player controls Adol as he explores through various areas, subduing enemies with a combination of magical abilities and Adol's trusty sword strikes. The game's combat system feels very dynamic in its hack-and-slash elements, with a few distinct ways to take down enemies. As Adol goes around, he collects arm braces that grant him elemental attacks of fire, wind, and earth. These magical abilities each have distinct purposes. Fire is projectile-based and allows for some range combat. Wind is very effective at doing significant damage to groups of enemies with its area of effect attack, and Earth is both a powerful attack and can be used defensively to mitigate or block damage. In case the magical abilities weren't useful enough, they can also be used to access areas otherwise unreachable by Adol, although this is mainly the Wind and Earth abilities, allowing Adol to glide to new platforms or crash through broken walls. The exploration part of the gameplay is solid, but not remarkable. There's a lot of goodies around in each area to collect, such as the Ravel ore you use to upgrade your weapons and armor, and some accessories that you need to get to make it through certain sections, like the stone shoes in the ice caves. If you just thoroughly explore each area, this should be no problem. I also recommend marking areas you can't reach now for when you do get the ability you need to access them later on. Backtracking is made easier via the monuments in the game. To start, they just serve as save points and offer you full heals, but once you get a certain item, you can then fast travel between any of the monuments. Highly useful in revisiting previous areas. I was a bit surprised to find that there is more platforming in Oath than in any previous East game I've played, but it's not too difficult in my opinion, and you can always activate no fall mode to make the experience easier. The game is more open to exploration than Origin is, but nowhere near as open as Celceta, so I think it's nice, but overall not that big a deal in the context of the game. The game is still linear, but there are some side quests you can do that give you additional rewards from items to more character moments, so I recommend doing them if you have the inclination. Now it's time to talk difficulty. As I said before, I was warned that this game was the hardest game in the series by multiple people. They weren't kidding. The regular enemies are bad enough, and while some of my early deaths could be attributed to my rusty skills for this combat system, more of them would be attributed to lack of skill to rise to the challenge. That's just for the regular enemies. The boss battles are another matter. There is a reason why the Steam achievement gotten by the most players for this game is died over 10 times to a single boss. These bosses are almost all extremely difficult. There were only 2 I beat on the first attempt, but more importantly, they also feel fair. The bosses are certainly difficult, but every time I died against one, I could identify what mistakes I had made that caused that to happen. That doesn't mean I wasn't still salty at times when I died, and I do feel there are 1 or 2 bosses that are poorly designed to enhance difficulty, but the challenge of defeating the bosses enhanced the feeling of accomplishment once they had successfully been defeated, especially when it was on a clutch play on my part to defeat the boss on seriously low health. Those were the moments that really stood out to me when all was played and done. Thankfully, if the difficulty of the game worries you, there are a wide range of difficulties to choose from at the start, so you can find the one that challenges you without reducing you to spiking your mouse/controller. On the visual side of things, the standout part of the game to me is the character designs, with a lot of distinctive looks that help inform their character. Otherwise, the visuals are very much of their era. It just happens to be an era of Falcom art design I'm fond of due to my love of the Trails in the Sky games. Oath and Felghana came out in between the releases of the first and second Trails games. The models and environments are clean and look really good, especially on the PC with the updated graphics. The only cutscenes, at the beginning and end of the game, don't benefit from the same improvement though, so they look really dated. For the other areas of presentation though, Oath and Felghana excels. The soundtrack is solid, although I'm not sure I could point to any track being exceptional as some tracks were for East 1, 2, or Origin. There weren't, however, any tracks that felt boring or out of place, so a fundamentally good soundtrack for the game. Then we come to the voice acting. Since the dub was made back in 2013, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was blown away by the voice acting. In particular, Elena's voice actor was incredible, and one other performance that would be a spoiler but showed just how much ability Derek Stephen Price has. There was one odd choice with the voice acting though, as they had a voice actor narrate Adol's actions since he was, as usual, a silent protagonist. Of course, it didn't ruin the game or anything, it simply surprised me when it first cropped up, as I'd never heard of a game doing that before. There was a lot about the Oath in Felghana that surprised me. The strong narrative, the wonderful acting performances, the exciting challenge of the gameplay, even though I'd been warned about that one, it all came together to give a wonderful gaming experience. This one is a must-play for Ys fans, certainly, fans of Falcom's work as well, and highly recommended to anyone with an interest in action RPGs with some platforming and exploration elements. With another solid Ys game under my belt and a new favorite at the top of the list, I eagerly await the continuation of my playthrough of the Ys games. Next up will be Ys 6, The Ark of Napishtim. Hope you enjoyed this video on Ys, The Oath in Felghana, and will join me for the next one. As always, leaving a like helps me dodge another attack from the most difficult boss of all, the YouTube algorithm. And I always love to read anyone's comments and thoughts on the video, the game, or the series in general. If you want to keep following my videos on Ys or other video games, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and happy gaming.